The competitive 40K network presents Art of War. Art of War. Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Art of War 40K podcast. I'm your host, Nick Nanavati, and this week we are joined by a brand new guest, Durante Bozenni, from California, now lives in Las Vegas, and is taking down tournaments with Tau, a faction we have literally not talked about in so long. And I am here and so excited to talk to him about exactly how it all works, his list, his play style, how he got into Warhammer, and he's going to share with us all of his insights on how he can become a Tau master, winning tournaments, and even consulting for World Team Championship teams. And then in part two of our conversation, we're going to break down the games he actually played at the Mountain West Classic. All 5 rounds, he went undefeated. We're going to break it down game by game by game. Dante, how are you doing?
Hey, Nick, I'm doing very well. These last couple of weeks have been much busier than I was expecting them to be, but overall, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here, and I'm happy to talk about Tau.
That's awesome. I'm super excited to talk about it too. And I'm so curious because you're a player that I am not super familiar with, and I have not, been as in the scene as I have been. So it's really exciting to see new blood kind of reaching the podiums and getting some awesome success. Tell me about how you got into Warhammer.
So I got into Warhammer like 24 years ago now, when I was 8 years old, and it was Christmas time, and I was visiting my cousins, and they had gotten some new toys, and they just happened to be like Devilfish with Fire Warriors and a Crisis suit. And so from the like November 2001 Tau initial release wave, and when I got home, I was like, Mom, Dad, I gotta have this toy they had. And when my birthday came around in June, I got that like original Crisis Commander in the Tau book. And flash forward many years of being very passionate about the hobby. I made a friend in high school who was like the only other kid at the high school that knew anything about Warhammer, and we played Garage Hammer in with this Coke can is a Death Dread, and this pin vise is the Killacan, this cut out sheet of paper is another Hammerhead, for a bunch of years. And then in COVID, when we were all packed inside and using the internet for everything, I found a community on Tabletop Simulator of really great people and supportive and friendly environment, in a Discord league called the Alpha League. Shout out to the homies. And that really sparked my passion for the competitive side of the game.
Awesome. So you basically took the plunge that many people take in this hobby and kind of get in as a younger person in high school, found a friend, played some Garage Hammer, and then later on in life you kind of found Tabletop Simulator as your gateway back into it. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And then I've struggled for a long time with anxiety and panic attack issues almost before every game of 40K that I've played in my adult life. And I couldn't explain to you why. That's a job for my therapist. But overall, coming back into the hobby in late 2023, when things started to open up again, and playing in real life, I have found our community to be ultimately welcoming and supportive. And every one of my opponents at the Mountain West Classic, when I said to them, hey, I'm anxious about this stuff, I'm nervous, they were fantastic opponents and just great sports, and aided me in playing through all of my games and continuing to enjoy this thing that we all love.
That really makes me so happy. I mean, as part of the Warhammer community, and I've been doing this since I was 10 years old, over 2 decades now, I'm thrilled to hear that's been in a warm, welcoming, inviting, comfortable place for you to be yourself, and kind of overcome that anxiety and really thrive in the environment and make your hobby something that you can really enjoy genuinely and authentically. I think that's fantastic. So I want to bring it back a little bit to the game, but I love that story. In there's a big gap between like just playing in Garage Hammer and then of course like getting into the Alpha League on Tabletop Simulator. It's like a whole different world of Warhammer where you're not even physically playing with the models and all that. And then playing in person with models and winning tournaments. There's a big how do we go from point A to point B there? So tell me that story a little bit.
Look, Nick, that's a question I'm still asking myself. Okay, even in this moment, we're like, whoa, how did I get here?
Right.
Part of it was that through Tabletop Simulator, I met the wonderful people from WTC Team Slovakia, and they asked me to play as a mercenary for them last August in WTC 2024. And with like the support of my friends from online on TTS, and also my fellow players from Team Zugzwang, which I am a founding like partner of. They're mostly German team, but we have one American member, me, and and through all of the like effort together, basically, I went to the WTC, and that was sort of the like trial by fire moment for me of like, okay, a bunch of people that are my friends from all over the world think that I'm good enough at this that they want me to come help them like try and play for WTC, like I guess not victory, but high result placing.
Yeah.
And so I went there and I played against Sean Naden in the first round last year.
Oh wow.
And I bumped into you there, I think, for a moment, but like, right, you had no reason to know who I was at that moment in time.
Interesting.
And Sean made an incredible play, and I was like, all right, Sean, I have one move I can do here. Otherwise, it's absolutely an O20. If this Riptide and these Pathfinders can deal 12 mortal wounds to your Karn, I'm going to hold you on this game. And then, yeah, the Riptide rolled 16 devastating wounds, half to 8, and the Pathfinders threw 4 damage on grenades. And like, okay. We do love our dice game.
Yeah, right.
And so that moment of WTC inspired me to then attend LVO this January. And I was able to, through a series of reasonable pairings and good matches and great opponents, go 6-0 at LVO. And then I didn't play into the shadow round for extenuating circumstances, but that inspired me to go on to try another GT and another one. And I went and played Scorched Earth Open in the beginning of March, and I went 6-0 there and got the golden ticket that they offered, defeating Yunari in the finals at the height of their power, and then to Charity Cup, and then now the Mountain West Classic.
That's spectacular. So you have not been competing like that long, all said and done. It's just been like a really fast rise to stardom here over time. That's really amazing. Okay, so now that I got a sense of like kind of how you got into Warhammer and how you've made the trajectory into the competitive scene, tell me a little about yourself as a player. You've been playing pretty much Tau, from what I can tell. Do you play other armies or mostly Tau?
So I play Tau in person entirely because that is the army that I have owned and built and painted. Through Tabletop Simulator, I tried a few other armies and got a feel for Adeptus Mechanicus, the Grey Knights, Orcs, as well as Chaos Space Marines, and Necrons, right? That's the other one.
Right.
But I think there is something special about the Tau to me. It's just a faction that I've really enjoyed for a long time, and I find that their specific style of the overwhelming firepower in the shooting phase, and at the to pay that price, you have to be able to play basically without a charge phase to flip objectives. That's something that I really actually enjoy.
That's wonderful. Okay, so how did you find Tau in 10th edition? I mean, they're a faction that has, I think, definitely been on the lower end of the power totem pole. At least that's how people perceive them. And despite that, you've kind of been able to find your own way to succeed with them. What has that journey been like for you, and how have you found success with Tau?
Okay, so a more complex question now for me, Nick. Fair enough.
It's an escalating crescendo, you know. First we get to know you, and then I put you in the hot seat.
Okay, so I've been playing Tau for. Let me start by saying I've been playing Tau for a long time. So the like 8th to 9th edition Tau versus the 9th to 10th edition Tau, right? It was a much worse transition in terms of like rules interactions back then, where our win rate dropped to like a maintained like 33% or something like that for a number of months. So currently 10th edition Tau, right, from Index and then into Codex, the Kauyon Tau philosophy has basically been the same, which is if you don't contest me on turn 1 and 2, if I make it to turn 3, 4, 5, I am going to win the game. And it's very like, and there are many other games where you like can say that you have a win condition. And so I've specifically found success with Tau by saying, I have a win condition you don't have. If 2,000 points of my army makes it to turn 3 and fights 2,000 points of your army, I'll table you in 1 turn.
Right. That's a pretty good approach to the game, right? Like just absolute murder if you get to apply your damage.
Right, and it puts my opponent in a lose-lose situation, which is the sort of one of the best things that you can do in a war game is make your opponent choose between the lesser of 2 evils rather than allowing them to have any kind of winning scenario.
So what does that look like to you? I mean, how do you put them in this lose-lose situation on the table?
Well, a bit of it comes into, I think, stuff that we'll address later with like list design and the specific games. But in general, it is presenting situations like you may or may not have seen, or your viewers may or may not have seen in the final of the Mountain West Classic. There's a moment where I can place a piranha wholly in the open. Well, not wholly in the open, but like behind a building and with a line of sight where a lancer can absolutely come shoot it and say, this is safe because if you come shoot this with a lancer, I can shoot that lancer with a Riptide, a Skyray, and a Hammerhead. Mm-hmm. And so that's the like lose-lose. Either you kill my piranha and you lose your lancer and now you can't kill the Hammerhead that's on that flank, or my piranha gets to survive and do whatever it wants to do next turn, despite being in a spot where it should have died, right? And that's like an example of a lose-lose situation that I've created just by taking the models in my list and deploying them into specific locations.
Yes.
Simple.
Right. So you're basically threatening counter shooting opportunities. Like you put something on the objective, try to get your opponent to expose something, then you get to kind of get into a trade war, if you will, where if you don't participate in the trade war, then you're going to score a lot of points as the Tau player. And if they do participate in the trade war, they're going to trade down and you get to counter strike with lots of damage. Is that kind of the approach here?
Yes. And if they don't participate in the trading war, then I hit my win condition.
And what is that? Just the applying damage step?
Then that is the aforementioned 2,000 points of the Tau army is intact and it's battle round 3.
And battle round 3, what happens for your Tau army?
Yes. For anyone who is not familiar, the Kauyon Tau on battle rounds 3, 4, and 5 have sustained hits 1 army-wide. Every single ranged weapon is sustained hits 1, no other caveat if you make it that far. And they all ignore all modifiers. So if you shot that Lancer at the Hammerhead or the Skyray, for example, and both of those like heavy Lancer laser destroyers go through, but you don't quite deal you don't roll high enough to deal 14 damage, my bracketed Hammerhead will ignore your smoke and ignore its own bracket penalty with ignore mods and then sustained 1, and my railguns have 2 shots. So
right, if they roll 6, it's just sustained hits.
Yes, and
yeah.
For my runs, Nick, it is true in whatever way, and I thank the dice gods for it, that my railgun is like a special relic railgun where
your railgun just doesn't.
It doesn't matter which dice I roll. Yeah, that shit's coming up a 6.
Dude, I love that for you. No wonder you're so successful. That's amazing. Okay, so I get the idea here of you basically being able to get in this trade war and you're kind of like creating a material advantage. And if you don't get into the trade war, you end up going Super Saiyan with your army, sustained hits on everybody, and just bring the pain to your opponent and just go kill them on their side of the table. What about that gap? How do you cross the table from point A to point B? Like modern 40K has tons of ruin walls. Getting behind line of sight is typically not hard. How do you actually deal with being a shooting army that pretty much has no combat in these days?
I find the mantra is simple. Stuff is good. So I have rest in peace, 1 unit of stealth suits. They increased the points on you by 20 per unit, and 1 unit had to go. So I have 18 drops instead of 19 drops, but the previous list had 19 units on the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so part of the like, how do you cross the gap? How do you threaten the melee units? Is that situation that we just previously described? Well, what if not? It's not a piranha, right? What if it's a devilfish full of breachers?
Right.
Are you telling me you're going to send a full melee unit and like a Lancer laser destroyer? You hope the Lancer kills my devilfish and then the melee can kill the breachers? Because you have to do that. If you don't, a full unit of breachers is going to arrive to where you're hiding your melee unit. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Or get out and fully, if you're not fly, I get 10, 20, like 8 mil models out in front of you and shoot you, and then also you're move blocked. Or if you're Imperial Knights and you're playing Helverins, then like they move block those. I guess into a melee army, what's another good example? Into like Tyranids, right? The Maleceptor doesn't have enough attacks to clear the breachers and free himself from melee to be able to like, and then the Tyranids don't really have access to like fall back and shoot and charge.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the methods that I use. Is basically the same damned if you do, damned if you don't, to get my units across the no man's land and into proper position.
Beautiful. Okay, I think we need a little bit more context in order to actually understand how this all comes together. Can you can you tell me your list top to bottom? Just read it off for me.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So my list is Tau Empire, right? And then the Kauyon detachment. My Warlord is Commander Shadowsun. I have a team of 10 Breachers, 10 Carnivores, 10 Pathfinders with ion rifles, 2 units of 3 stealth suits with marker drones and shield drones, 1 unit of 5 Vespid Stinglings, 2 Krutox Riders together in a single unit, 1 Ghost Keel, 1 Hammerhead with Railgun, 2 Piranhas with the Fusion Blasters and 2 Seeker Missiles each, 3 Golden Riptide Battlesuits, each with Ion Accelerators and Smart Missile Systems. That'll be important later. 2 Skyray Gunships, also with Smart Missile Systems, and a Devilfish to transport the aforementioned Breachers, also with 2X Seeker Missiles and 2 Smart Missile Systems.
Very nice. Very compact, very effective. Tell me about the approach to this army. Now, I kind of got the general strategy, but how are you actually positioning your units on the table, and like what are you leading with to get the game going?
So in terms of like starting deployment, the Pathfinders with recon drone against an army with infiltrate of any kind, right? They have infiltrate and scout, and so they come down to protect my army from enemy forward infiltrators, like those pesky like pure strain gene stealers that want to infiltrate and then advance and charge at me. That's like the first drop, and then most of the army, right, is going to position to take 1 or more sightlines. It's like that's pretty straightforward shooting deployment where there are 3 Riptides and there are 3 anti-tank pieces, right? 2 Skyrays and the Railhead, the Railgun Hammerhead.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will all position to overlap fields of fire into everything we need to. And then we set up all of our like different chaff pieces to be the pawns that I force my opponent to take with their pieces, such that I can take them in return. Obvious, or maybe not obviously, but something that a train that I have been on for well, since like last July, is that Tau Indirect is underrated.
Mhm.
And the smart missile systems on every single one of my vehicles provide me with 33 strength 5 AP0 damage 1 indirect shots, which with the new rules, it didn't used to work this way, but with the new Tau army rule, if I get an observe on one of your like units out of line of sight, even if it's just like with something random, like a ghost kill, then the entire army is all of the non-observed observation units are +1 ballistic skill, which means the entire Tau army suddenly goes from BS4, like -1 to hit indirect, to BS3, which means we no longer care how many minuses there are to hit with the indirect because we just hit on 4s. And then Shadowsun has a reroll aura, reroll 1s, and so all of a sudden 33 indirect shots are hitting on 4s and rerolling 1s.
Oh,
The
wow.
Hammerhead has anyone reroll. The Skyray's full hit reroll into fly. And so we have an oppressive damage tax that will be occurring whether you engage me or not, right? The number of saves I'm handing out on average to Space Marines every turn is 15, which means you're losing 2.5 Space Marines if you roll average. Like, yeah, maybe you high roll. Sure, yeah, that'll happen. But I'm going to do this every turn for 5 battle rounds. And on one of these turns, you're going to roll 10 1s and 2s on those 15 dice, as we know happens. And you're going to lose a full unit of intercessors to me doing nothing. So that's like the overall pressure game, right? We play that, and there's a lot more that we'll get into, I think, when we're going over game by game. But that's the general analysis.
Wonderful. I mean, I think that's spot on for like how a good Tau army plays. I feel like one of the challenges to Tau though is there's so much nuance to the actual ins and outs of guiding and positioning and not getting charged and tagged. How do you manage just the playing such a monophase faction, right? Basically, you shoot, you're vulnerable to getting touched in combat outside of Riptides. You're not tanks with invuls outside of Riptides, like your Hammerheads and Skyrays can kind of just go down. Your units are not really cheap. How do you balance it all?
So balancing the Tau Empire in the game of 40K is very difficult. I often describe it as like walking a tightrope, but the tightrope is a knife's edge. And so the thing is that you can't be too precious with your material, and it's very hard as even someone who has played for quite a long time to know exactly what factors contribute to any given win or loss. And so I find in my gameplay of the Tau Empire that getting a lot of repetitions and changing as few variables as possible in like each repetition and each subsequent one helps my analysis. And through that analysis, I have determined, right, that this set of units that I run without much exception is exactly the correct formula to be able to get everything you need out of the shooting phase, because you're a monophase faction. And so if there's a problem that should be solved in the shooting phase, it must be solved in the shooting phase.
Right.
But then also facilitate solving problems in a variety of other phases. That's what I think becomes the hardest to nail down when it's correct. And if you've seen my game at the Scorched Earth Open, there is a moment in there where I'm like, all right, and we're going to learn together if this is a mistake or not. But I'm going to charge the Incarn with a Riptide and a Skyray because she's not touching an objective. And so if I pin her here, then she like basically has to choose between being stuck in this fight and or playing the objective game. And I'm like, the math says that I should take 2d6 plus 2 damage on this Riptide at worst, right? And that's with a CP reroll, right? It's very possible it's going to be 1d6 plus 1. And then for sure enough, I like failed the CP reroll and it's 2d6 plus 2, and they put boxcars in the box and the Riptide dies.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, look, but this is a lesson for the person, for like, you know, for anyone trying to play the monophase army, that you're like, you have to push these limits. You have to know, okay, and like getting punished like that just made me sure that it was the correct thing to have done.
Right.
I was like, it definitely, that happening, that's the 1 in a million time that's going to happen to me. So it's not going to happen any other time I charge the Incarn in the future with a Riptide. Surely, right? That's how the dice game works.
Yeah. So that's a great insight into like how you're viewing the game. Like your pieces are tools to like kind of just charge into your opponent's problem, solve the situation. You have to be able to read the board state as well, right? Like let's keep the Incarn off of the objective. And I love that. I think playing Tau at this level requires a certain level of situational awareness and ability to read the board state and all that. I think that is part of what makes a great Warhammer player. You have some oddball choices, and what strikes me as a very interesting thing here is like you specifically said this is like the Tau list, you know, like if these are the tools that I take to give me everything I need to get the job done, and there's like not much room for wiggle there. But you have things like one Vespid squad and like a random crew tox unit, and you know you're missing things that I often see, like there's no commanders or suits or anything of that nature. How did you arrive at this like specific combination of units, and what is the purpose of like the oddball choices?
Okay, and also the Crew Talks Riders and I say, how dare you, Nick? Random?
Dude, I love Crew. I love Crew and I love Crew Talks. Let me just be the first to say
okay,
that.
I was like, you, Nick, of all people?
No. I will not have Crew slander in my house. Absolutely not. I am a Crew fan lover.
So, and let me be clear, Nick, here together. We can agree. I will tell you, I think seriously that the Crew Talks Rider is the single greatest data sheet in the Tau Guns.
Dude, tell me about it. Why?
He's suffered nerfs twice now, and I still think this is true. The Crew Talks Rider at toughness 6 is the perfect breakpoint to throw off the math of so much of the meta in terms of the number of like heavy bolters that wound him on 5s. Same for his 5 health, right? It like requires 3 heavy bolter shots. Heavy bolters mostly have 3 shots. You're wounding him on 5s. If he has cover, is saving on 5s. And the melee profiles of the game have mostly been flattened to be strength 5 or strength 6 or strength 7. And so being toughness 6 makes a bunch of those melee profiles like also super awkward into the Crew Talks Rider. Like even Incubi are like, wait, we wound him on 5s? And so that combined with just enough Marine and Elf killing melee, right? He's got 4 attacks of 6-1-2. And very so importantly, both being OC2 and having the grenade keyword. And so people a lot of the time, I think, like sleep on the grenades keyword.
It's great. It's so good.
And yes, and right, and my Crew Talks Rider killed Canis Rex with his autocannon and then charged Hector and beat him to death. And I was like, yep, you're in every list. And then at the WTC in the final game against Grey Knights, I had a disaster where the Grey Knight player all in me, like correctly, right? And I clapped back and killed a bunch of Dread Knights. And I had 2 Riptides running injured. And they exploded across my army with the D6 explosions, enough to actually deal 11 damage to a Sky Ray that had taken only a single failed save, and it also exploded. Before the explosions were done, I had taken 49 mortal wounds and lost approximately 800 points of my army.
Oh my God.
Right? Yep. Sometimes it happens. 40K is a dice game. Explosions are a fun mechanic.
Right.
And the Crew Talks Rider was in reserve. And he came out of reserve on Scorched Earth onto the home point, and I suicided every other model in my army to hold the Grey Knights where they were so they couldn't teleport strike. And he did recover assets. He did sabotage. He burned the enemy home. And that 35-point Crew Talks Rider scored me 35 victory points and allowed me to hold it to a 10-10.
Holy crap. I mean, that's just situational in the sense that like anything could have helped you survive there, but it was a Crew Talks, and I can appreciate that. Tell me about the other like units you have and why they're like very carefully calibrated into your army.
Okay, so a couple of the other choices are, for example, the Vespid Stingwings. The Vespid are an uppy downy, right? And Kauyon specifically has a 1 command point stratagem that allows me to pull up at the end of the fight phase the Ghost Keel, Shadowsun, or either of the stealth teams. So because that is a constant threat to my opponent, it is doubly effective to have 5 Vespid that mostly screen my backline and drop down into the opponent's backline if needed to score behind enemy lines. But it's truly when in Kauyon and combined with those other threats, right, that they become impossibly devastating. Because Shadowsun teleporting with the Vespid in the back now grant the Vespid reroll 1s to their hit rolls, in addition to the sustained 1 that they gain from it being a Kauyon turn. And between their 10 shots of 5-2-2, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, sustained 1, and then Shadowsun's missiles and multi-meltas and Flechette all on ballistic skill 2, rerolling 1, sustained 1, and potentially +1 to wound, depending on which stratagems I have access to. It means that you can reliably clear like an entire enemy unit of Marines off of their home and just go tidied up. So that's why the Vespid are in the list. The Ghost Keel is something I can't live without. He is he is a unit that he sets up the house of cards that I'm trying to get my opponent to have to build to beat me.
Right.
It's
Basically,
all right.
he's a lone op. He's tough to kill with his flips, and your opponent has to kind of commit a lot to deal with the Ghost Keel that starts on the objective with infiltrate, and then you can kind of counter strike him effectively.
Exactly. Yeah. Even a unit of Sangard, right, with a jump captain is not flipping that model reliably. And that is something that happened at the Mountain West Classic. And so setting up those trades is as important as anything, right? Because that's how we facilitate our win conditions. So the Ghost Keel serves that purpose. The dual Piranhas also serve that purpose. I think without giving too much away, one of the reasons that the Krutox Riders are in, right, and that the Pathfinders serve such a devastating flanking purpose is because of my photon grenades, right? It is a true thing that -2 to charge is annoying, but being battle shocked in your own fight phase means that you are battle shocked from the point at which before you can score until you can score again in your next command phase. And that is why a bunch of these units function really invaluably in the list. That's why the Piranhas and Krutox Riders and the Pathfinders and Carnivores all function together as the trading pieces, along with the annoyance of the Ghost Keel. Because, for example, in the RTT that I was playing at just yesterday, there was an AC/DC brick, the Accursed Cultist plus Dark Commune, which is a chaos unit that includes a large group of melee cultists that can blood surge. Which is a mechanic where when you're shot, you can move a d6 plus potentially more as a reaction after that shooting. And you cannot blood surge while you are battle shocked. And so the 2 Piranhas walked up to that unit and said, please make 2 battle shock tests. They were safe out of blood surge range just in case. But since the Chaos Army wasn't able to line up very much shooting against me, I lined up 2 Riptides, Pathfinders, Ghost Keel, assorted into the unit, asked them to take 2 tests. Sure enough, they didn't roll the 6+ both times. They rolled an 8 and then they rolled a 5, which is perfectly average. We're almost perfectly average. And then I shot and killed the full unit to death.
Right.
Right. So right, these sort of strange picks all serve an exact purpose within the toolbox. Shadowsun going uppy downy with the Vespid, the Pathfinders infiltrating, the Piranhas following up with their Scout 9 and Move 14, and then all of this backed up by, as we described, 7 different hulls of the Devilfish, 2 Skyrays, Hammerhead, and 3 Riptides that have truly monstrous threat. Right, if unheeded.
Yeah, it basically comes together very beautifully. I love that. If you are listening to this, it probably means you play Warhammer 40k. And if you're playing Warhammer, you know you need a lot of dice. Baron of Dice is where we get our dice from. They produce amazing different kinds of dice. We just recently got all kinds of different faction dice shipped to us, which we use on our stream games. But not only do they look really cool, but they're highly customizable. You can get different symbols, corners that are square, corners that are round, different shapes and sizes, different sided dice. It's all the rage. And they're customizable in color and design as well. They are so cool looking. Not only that, but they feel great to roll in your hands. I've never held dice that roll and feel this good. Not only that, but they are scientifically perfectly balanced. There are tons of case studies on people rolling thousands of dice and recording all the results that they get. And sometimes you might get a die that rolls just a few too many ones. We've all had to throw it out before. These dice are not like that. They are perfectly balanced to a T, thousands of rolls, perfect distribution. If you want to take your Warhammer game seriously and make sure the dice are not screwing you over, get some Baron of dice. One of the challenges I always see Tau players struggle with, and this is an advantage I like to take advantage of when I'm playing against Tau, is that they're kind of bad at primary. You know, like you can put something on the objective, but like I can just go contest it or kill it or whatever. Like you don't have durable chunks of good OC. And holding primary often means getting closer to your opponent, which can be very dangerous in and of itself. How do you actually deal with primary?
So that is part of the so my method for dealing with primary is to recognize that each game is not decided by any one turn of primary scoring necessarily, and
Right.
I play basically like a greater good plan for the Tau Va to make sure that there's enough primary to go around, right? My opponent can have some primary, and then later when they're tabled, I'll have some primary.
Right.
And a big factor for that, right, is that photon grenades exist, and likely the unit you have to charge to flip the point is a photon grenades unit. And so are you sending me 2 units, or do you have a way to guarantee that you pass a random leadership test, or are you just leaving denying primary to up to coin flip? Because, right, like if you fail the battle shock when you're charging my unit to flip my primary, you don't have OC. My point's sticky because I have Brute Carnivores on it, so it doesn't matter that you kill anyone. You don't have OC to flip the point.
Right. And it could also allow you to get shot off and not have to worry about that if it's a shooting type of battle because it's sticky objectives.
Absolutely, right? But and also that's another thing where like if it's 2 Crutox riders on the objective, shoot them. I dare you to shoot them. I dare you to come shoot my 60-point unit that is toughness 6 and 10 wounds. They need las cannons to affect las cannons or multi-meltas to effectively kill them. And if anything with those weapons shows up and kills not a tank, I will kill it. And then it will definitely not kill a tank.
Right.
So just it's right.
That makes a lot of sense. I like that. And then you have 19 units, and many of them infiltrate, scout. You have a lot of stuff kind of everywhere. So I imagine secondaries are not too difficult. What's your process on secondaries?
The secondary game is very interesting over the course of 10th, right? I played fixed early on when Cleanse and Homers was just like a very reliable 35. And then swapped to tactical, and I very much enjoyed Pariah's tactical with the like heavy emphasis on actions. Was able to facilitate that. Rest in peace, Containment. And the new secondaries, right, with Display of Might and Tempting Target, both going like, hey, we want you to be in no man's land and we want you to be able to get to the enemy primary. I have found my secondary averages have dropped by like a couple of points, right? And as far as it goes, I think everything is within the like acceptable margin of tolerance, acceptable margin of error. I'm at like 28 or something like secondary points on average, I think, with some games being like outliers in terms of like, okay, well, I got 40 secondary because they were tabled by turn 3.
Right.
So that's not like playing a full 5-turn game and doing 5 turns of secondary. I think the Tau army will be very good at playing into the new smaller scoring objectives and using challenger cards if they fall in any meaningful way behind.
Yeah, challenger cards really do help get you that secondary edge, just to like catch up, especially if you're falling behind on primary. And then, secondaries, you're not bad at it by any stretch, so it should be able to kind of make up the difference. What army archetypes do you find are most difficult for you to play with this Tau, since you have such a very narrow scope and a perspective on how you approach the game? Being a monophase shooting army, are there certain archetypes or lists that are just like hard counters?
No. That's well, we're in the Imperial Knight meta now. So Imperial and Chaos Knights are both incredibly difficult for almost everyone to deal with, and so my poor space fish are no exception.
Hmm.
But previous to Knight meta, I would have told you no, there's no hard counter in the game to my Kauyon, like on army. What hard counters me is getting a map that I can be abused on.
Right, absolutely. I wasn't even thinking about that, but that makes such sense. Like terrain is your biggest factor in all these games more than your
Yes,
opponent.
literally,
Yeah,
and but way more than what army I'm against.
right. So what do you do? I can imagine on a shooting gallery like layout 4, you're fine. You're good to go. Just shoot the guns at your opponent. But what do you do on like a heavy terrain board, like say a layout 7 or an 8?
Right. So we played the final rounds of the Mountain West Classic on the new layout 8. And on those, I was against Blood Angels, Liberator Assault Group, and then Black Templars, Gladius. And when you are playing Tau against a melee army or like when you're playing Tau against an army on these layouts that massively restrict your line of sight, you have to play a riskier game. And part of that, like to be more specific,
Right.
part of that riskier game involves positioning units where they are like just out of a charge range and an opponent can shoot them, or they are within a charge range and it's a 10-inch charge, or if they have advance in charge, right, you're like, that's a 14 on 3d6. If you hit the 6 on the advance, it's literally an 8 and there's nothing I can do about that. I have to stand here. So I think part of it is sort of like accepting the things that you cannot change, and then changing the thing you can, which is how you are going to deploy. I think, right, a lot of Tau players struggle to ride that like knife's edge and tend to play towards the like safe side of the fence, where they're like, all right, well, I'll just make sure that my unit doesn't get killed, and then they can't like take the line of sight they need, they can't get to the objective they need. A lot of these like harder to deal with layouts can be solved if you are willing to play a riskier game, and that's another reason that like a ghost keel is a fantastic inclusion. In my game on layout 8, you see that the ghost keel gets to hard pressure my opponent's home with no response. He literally cannot respond to it with anything other than rapid ingressing his his fire disciplined hellblasters, which was absolutely the correct play. And I was like, damn it, he saw the correct line, and he did do the correct line. Shout out to Jake, an incredible opponent, and played a great game.
Nice.
But those like layouts, right, you just have to handle them with their own specific tact.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. You basically have to get a little more aggressive to try to get to your opponent's side of the ruins, because otherwise you're not going to be able to play your normal game. I love that. All right. So that pretty much wraps up all of my questions for part 1, except I got one more I want to ask you before we head on to your actual games played of this tournament. If you had a piece of advice you can give an aspiring Warhammer 40K player looking to get better, what would it be?
It's easy, right? It's too easy to say something like pre-measure everything. That's
It's not the advice you want to give. I get you.
I think the community is here for like this moment in 40K, where the popularity of 40K is exploding, and there are new players flocking in from a number of different other hobbies and sectors and new regions. And so to all the like the new players out there coming into the hobby and wanting to get better, I think my best advice is always just to get reps in the game. and talk with the people in your community about the games that you play or your theories for lists. Immersing yourself in the community and playing games of 40K is the best thing you can do. And then I refer you to the thing I said earlier in the episode, which is don't jump wildly between lists if you're trying to refine your play. It's perfectly reasonable to do because it's fun and we have cool toy soldiers. If you're doing it for that reason, definitely do so. But if you're trying to specifically improve, choose a list. And if you lose a game, don't go back to the drawing board. Change like 100 points at most and then play it again.
I love that. I think that's fantastic advice. It's too easy for players to kind of lose a game and then not even know where it went wrong. Must got to be the list and just completely change the list. It's probably you. It's probably not the list. And even if the list might not be perfect, if you work on your Warhammer skills altogether, you'll probably see better results because of it in the end. So I love that advice. Dante, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, getting to know you, and talking about Tau. I'm super excited to continue this conversation with our patrons over on patreon.com/AOW40K. That's where we're going to go game by game by game through your tournament, the Mountain Classic. What was it again?
The Mountain West Classic.
The Mountain West Classic. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It was a pleasure, Nick. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're absolutely welcome. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. We, once again, can never do this show without you and your endless support for our channel. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. The Art of War 40K.com.